There's a moment in every journey that no one prepares you for. It's not the beginning when you're full of excitement, ambition, and naive confidence. And it's not the end when you're celebrated, applauded, remembered. It's the middle, that long, brutal middle, when the room goes quiet, when your phone doesn't buzz, when the people who used to check on you just stop, when you're no longer relevant, but not yet respected.
When your dreams feel distant and your heart feels heavy. When loneliness creeps in like a fog and asks the question you dread most. Why are you doing this? That's the moment that breaks most people. That's the moment they run back. To comfort. Back to the crowd. Back to the noise. Back to the life they swore they'd outgrow. But not you, because you understand something most people don't. Loneliness is not your punishment, it's your initiation.
They told you loneliness was something to fear. They made it sound like failure, like exile, like something shameful. But what if I told you that loneliness is not the enemy? That sometimes alone is where you find the deepest truth. Because here's the paradox. The higher you rise, the fewer people can breathe your air. The deeper you go into purpose, the less company you'll have. Because the crowd doesn't like the mirror your growth holds up to them, and so they fall away. Not because you changed into someone worse, but because you dared to change at all. Alone is not empty. Alone is where you stop performing. Alone is where the masks fall. Alone is where the real questions get asked. Tan finally answered. Alone is the workshop of your future self.
There is a cost to becoming something more than what you were. Not a financial cost, not a physical one, a soul cost. You will lose people you thought were permanent. You will lose the approval of those who once admired you. You will lose the ease of belonging, and in their place, you gain uncertainty, silence, solitude, self-confrontation. It's a brutal exchange. You give up being understood by others in order to understand yourself. You trade popularity for clarity. You let go of being liked in order to be true. That it doesn't feel noble when you're going through it. It feels like abandonment, like grief, like you're being punished for wanting more. But this is the hidden cost of becoming. And those who cannot pay it stay the same.
We live in a world that idolizes connection. Be reachable, be social, be online, be everything to everyone all the time. But here's the truth. The most connected people are often the most directionless, because too much input drowns your inner voice. Your phone dings, your feed updates, your inbox grows. And your spirit goes quiet because growth requires disconnection. You have to unplug from the noise to hear your own thoughts. You have to walk away from the group chat to write your book. You have to turn off the notifications to build your legacy. You cannot create something new if you're constantly responding to the old. You cannot heal if you're always explaining your pain. You cannot transform if you're addicted to validation. Sometimes to connect to yourself, you must disconnect from everyone else. And yes, that's lonely, but it's also liberating.
There's a name for the lonely middle. The time between who you were and who you're becoming. It's called the wilderness. It's not glamorous. It's not Instagrammable. It's not marketable. It's long walks with no destination. It's tears no one sees. It's nights full of questions and mornings full of doubts. It's where everything feels like it's falling apart. But something deeper knows you're just being rebuilt. Every leader has a wilderness. Every visionary, every creator, every revolutionary. Moses had 40 years. Jesus had 40 days. Nelson Mandela had 27 years in prison. The wilderness is not punishment. It's preparation. It teaches you how to walk alone. It teaches you who you are without applause. It teaches you what you really believe when the world stops clapping. And when you finally emerge, you're not just stronger, you're undeniable. Here's a confronting question. Who are you without the validation? When no one praises your work, will you still do it? When no one sees your effort, will you still show up? When no one likes your post, buys your product, or says thank you? Will you still believe in yourself? Because the ones who succeed are not the ones with constant encouragement. They're the ones who work in silence, long enough to earn their moment in the light. The world tells you to chase visibility, but purpose tells you to cultivate integrity. The world says be liked, but truth says be consistent. Applause is fleeting. Discipline lasts forever. Your loneliness is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're becoming the kind of person who can keep going without being seen, and that is the kind of person who eventually cannot be ignored.
Let me tell you what loneliness really is. It's a purification. It reveals who's really in your corner. It burns off the fake. It strips you of your need to perform. It exposes your ego. It dismantles your pride. And in the ashes of your former self, something raw and real begins to form. A version of you who doesn't need the crowd. A version of you who doesn't panic when no one replies. A version of you who has peace in silence. Because when you can endure loneliness, you become dangerous to the system. You no longer need the dopamine-driven social approval. You no longer bend to trends. You no longer break when people misunderstand. You stand in your truth, even if you stand alone. That is freedom. That is power.
There are things you only learn when you're alone. You learn how to self-soothe. You learn how to listen without reacting. You learn how to sit in the fire without running for the exit. You learn to become your own witness, to feel pain without narrating it, to see beauty in the quiet. You learn to parent your inner child, to coach your inner critic, to dream without needing approval. You learn to distinguish between loneliness and aloneness. One is despair, the other is depth. And eventually, you stop fearing the silence, because you realize it was never empty. It was always trying to teach you something that noise could never offer.
Do you know why you feel lonely? Because you chose truth over popularity? Because you said no when it was easier to say yes? Because you told the truth when lying would have kept the peace? Because you set boundaries instead of sacrificing yourself? And every one of those choices comes with a cost. People leave. Opportunities vanish. Conversations get awkward. Relationships dissolve, and it hurts deeply. But here's what most won't tell you. Authenticity will cost you everything fake, and that's a price worth paying. Because the only thing lonelier than walking alone is walking with people who never really saw you. The only thing more painful than being misunderstood is being accepted for a mask you no longer want to wear. Yes, authenticity costs you, but in return, it gives you yourself, and there is no more valuable relationship than the one you build with your own soul.
This process, this lonely, silent, invisible process, is not a death. It's a birth. You are not losing everything. You are shedding old beliefs, shedding false friends, shedding inherited guilt and secondhand shame. And what's being born is you, the real you, not the scared version, not the pleasing version, but the powerful, aligned, unapologetic you. And birth is never quiet. It's bloody, it's painful, it's messy, it demands everything, and it gives life in return. The loneliness you feel is not evidence that something is wrong. It's evidence that something real is being formed. Be patient. The version of you that will emerge from this will change everything.
Let's talk about the moments that hurt the most. Not the physical pain, not the exhaustion, but the look in someone's eyes when they don't believe in you. The forced smile, the polite nod, the unspoken message. I don't think you'll make it. Sometimes it's family. Sometimes it's friends. Sometimes it's people you used to admire. And each time it happens, something inside you fractures a little more. You begin to wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe you're not special. Maybe your dreams are just daydreams. Maybe your effort is just a waste of time. But here's the secret most don't learn until it's too late. You must believe in yourself, even when no one else does, especially when no one else does. Because belief isn't built in applause. It's built in silence, in the quiet hours when no one's clapping. In the early mornings when the world is still asleep. In the late nights when your eyes are red and your hands are trembling, but you still push forward. The people who make it are not the most talented. They're not the most supportive. They're the ones who kept going when no one thought they should. That's what makes you unstoppable.
Let's pause for a second and make a distinction. You are not broken because you're alone. There is a massive difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness says, I'm unwanted. Aloneness says, I am enough. Loneliness is desperation. Aloneness is discipline. Loneliness waits for someone to come save you. Aloneness says, I'll become who I need it. The world has conditioned you to fear solitude. To think that being by yourself means you failed socially, emotionally, even spiritually. But solitude is not a sickness, it's a strength. When you stop fearing your own company, you become free. You no longer need constant attention. You no longer need to be seen to feel real. You no longer rely on the energy of others to validate your own existence. Instead, you own your energy. You choose your presence. You walk in your truth even if it echoes.
Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat with yourself without distractions? No music, no phone, no scrolling. Just you, your thoughts, your breath, your heart. It sounds simple, but it terrifies most people because when the noise dies down, the real voices rise. The inner critic, the old pain, the unfinished grief, the hidden dreams. And yet, this is exactly where healing happens. Not in the crowd, not in the spotlight, but in that silent room where you finally admit what? You've been running from Dot. Solitude is not just absence, it's presence. It's the sacred space where you return to your center, where you learn what matters, where you face the truth that sets you free. Most people are strangers to themselves. They spend their whole lives avoiding that encounter. But not you. You chose the lonely road. And in return, you are meeting the person you were always meant to become.
Isolation feels cruel, like being locked out of the world. Like the universe slammed the door in your face, but what if it's not punishment? What if it's preparation? Look back on your life. Think of the times when everything went quiet, when friends stopped calling, when opportunities dried up, when you felt like you were invisible. Didn't something always shift afterward? Didn't something new emerge? That's the pattern. Before elevation comes isolation. Before visibility comes obscurity. Before strength comes solitude. The seed must be buried in darkness before it breaks through the soil. The caterpillar must dissolve completely before it becomes the butterfly. The diamond is formed under pressure. The sword is forged in fire. And you are becoming something unstoppable. So yes, you may be isolated, but don't mistake this. For abandonment, you're not being punished, you're being positioned. Here's a hard truth. No one is coming to give you permission. No one will knock on your door and say, you're ready now. No one will crown you. No one will anoint you, not your family, not your friends, not society, Doc. And if you wait for that, you'll wait forever. The people who build things who shape culture, shift paradigms, create movements, they all have one thing in common. They gave themselves permission. Permission to be different. Permission to try and fail. Permission to dream without apology. Permission to walk away from what no longer fit, and in doing so, they stepped into their power. Yes, it was lonely. Yes, they were misunderstood. Yes, they lost people, but they found something infinitely more valuable. Their voice, their vision, their self. You don't need applause. You don't need validation. You don't need someone to say, it's okay to go. Just go. Give yourself the green light. You are the permission you've been waiting for. In the middle of the noise, there is a voice that whispers. It's quiet, easy to miss, but it is always there. It doesn't flatter you. It doesn't coddle you. It doesn't care what the world says, it speaks only one language, truth, and in loneliness. When all the outside voices fade, this voice becomes clear. It says things like, this isn't right for you, you're playing small, you were made for more, it is inconvenient, it is confrontational, but it is honest. Most people drown it out because it threatens their comfort, but you listen. Because this voice is your compass. And once you learn to trust it, you'll never be lost again. Loneliness doesn't silence you. It tunes you and to your knowing, to your calling, to the voice that cannot lie. And that voice is your liberation.
People love results, success, transformation, breakthrough, but they forget what built it. The unseen hours, the ones where you showed up without recognition, the ones where you worked when no one cared, the ones where you cried in private, then got back to work. Those are the moments that shape greatness. And yes, they're lonely. They don't trend, they don't sparkle, they don't impress anyone, but they are everything because you are not forged in the spotlight. You are forged in the dark. You are built in the empty gym, in the silent study room, in the late night journal entry, in the early morning repetition, in the conversations you have with your doubts and the decisions you make anyway. Success is not the reward of popularity. It is the reward of persistence in loneliness. The world will one day see your glory, but only you will know what it costs. Make no mistake, there is a cost to becoming who you were meant to be. You will miss out on temporary pleasures. You will sit out of meaningless gatherings. You will decline invitations that don't align with your values. You will lose people who don't understand your urgency. And that cost can feel brutal, but here's what you gain. In return, clarity, focus, freedom, peace, because you no longer chase what doesn't feed you. You no longer beg for seats at tables you've outgrown. You no longer perform for approval you don't respect. You start building instead, creating instead, becoming instead. And what you build in loneliness will one day speak for itself. Let the cost be high, because the return is unshakable identity. At some point, you must learn to hold yourself, to hold your anger, your sadness, your fear, your hope. Not run from it. Not numb it, not outsource it to someone else, but hold it. Like a storm you've learned to respect, like a child you've learned to protect, like a fire you've learned to tend. This is not weakness. This is self-mastery, because the moment you become your own shelter, the world loses its power to break you. You stop waiting for someone to come save you. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop collapsing every time life gets hard. Instead, you breathe, you recalibrate, you keep walking, and each time you do, you realize you are the one you were waiting for. Here's the final truth of this part of the journey. Loneliness is not the destination, it's the bridge. It's what carries you from who you were to who you're becoming. From pretending to authenticity, from scarcity to purpose, from pleasing to power. No one crosses it without wounds. No one walks it without doubts. No one escapes it unchanged. But those who finish the crossing, they carry something rare, something most will never know. A quiet fire, an anchored soul, a peace that cannot be stolen, because they walked through the valley and kept going. They paid the price. They earned their truth. They are not afraid of silence anymore because they know what it gives. And so do you. There's a kind of grief no one talks about. It's not about losing another person, it's about losing yourself. The version of you that once fit in. The version of you that was agreeable, soft-spoken, people-pleasing. The version of you that smiled to keep the peace, that stayed silent to be liked, that hid their potential so others wouldn't feel threatened. You're mourning that person now, and that's okay, because they were necessary for a time. They got you through some dark places. They helped you survive, but you weren't meant to stay small. You were meant to expand. And with expansion comes discomfort, death, rebirth. So cry for that version of you if you need to. But do not resurrect them. They are gone, and in their place, you are rising.
Let's talk about rejection. It stings, it humbles, it cuts deeper than most people admit when they didn't text back, when they chose someone else, when they looked you in the eyes and said, "You're not the right fit." Rejection is loneliness with sharp teeth. But what if rejection is not the end? What if it's divine redirection? Think back. Some of your greatest blessings came after a door slammed shut. Some of your best growth came after someone walked away. Some of your boldest moves were made after life said, "Not here." Rejection doesn't define your worth. It clarifies your direction. It refines your standards. It removes distractions. It sharpens your focus. So feel the pain, but don't take it personally. What left you made space for what's coming. Let it. One of the loneliest feelings in the world is being misunderstood. You explain yourself, but they still don't get it. You open up, and they laugh, dismiss, or deflect. You share your dream, and they say, "That's not realistic." So you shrink. You quiet your fire. You carry your vision in silence, afraid that if you show it again, it'll be rejected all over. But hear this, you do not need to be understood to be great. You are not here to be everyone's favorite character. You are not here to explain your soul to people committed to misunderstanding you. Your calling is not a community project. It was whispered to you, not the crowd. Stop waiting for consensus. Stop begging for permission. Stop mourning the minds that cannot meet you. Some people will only understand your value in hindsight. Let them. There are stories in your life that will never get a neat ending. People who will never apologize. Words you'll never get to say. Questions that will never be answered. And the most painful part, knowing you have to move on without it. That's loneliness on another level. But here's the truth. Closure is a luxury, not a necessity. You don't need them to understand what they did. You don't need the perfect goodbye. You don't need the story to make sense to heal. You need acceptance. You need to take your power back. You need to stop waiting and start walking. Your future doesn't begin when they say sorry. It begins the moment you decide, this chapter is over. Let it close. Even if the final page is blank. Even if the last sentence is silenced. You don't need to hide your pain. You don't need to smile through it. You don't need to package it with a pretty caption. You don't need to apologize for it. Your pain is sacred. It's not weakness. It's not shameful. It's not a stain on your strength. It's a portal, a teacher, a fire that either destroys or transforms depending on how you use it. Loneliness deepens pain, but it also deepens wisdom. You sit with yourself long enough, and eventually your pain speaks. It says things like, "You gave too much there. You abandon yourself again. You've outgrown this version of your life." Pain is your most honest friend. And when you stop numbing it, it becomes your most powerful guide. Honor it, not by wallowing, but by listening. At some point, the support fades. The likes drop off. The DMs go unanswered. The excitement around your work fizzles. And in that silence, you start to doubt everything. Is it worth it? Does anyone care? Should I quit? But what you must understand is this. The silence isn't a punishment. It's a test of discipline, a test of vision, a test of whether you're building for applause or from purpose. Anyone can show up when the room is full, but can you show up when it's just you and your shadow? Can you write when no one's reading? Can you speak when no one's listening? Can you create when no one's clapping? If the answer is yes, you're not just talented, you're dangerous because you've detached from the outcome. And that's where true mastery begins. Let's be real. People-pleasing is just self-abandonment dressed in politeness. It's smiling when you want to scream. It's agreeing when your soul says no. It's showing up for them, even though no one ever shows up for you. And it's exhausting, lonely, soul-crushing dot. But there comes a moment, maybe you're living it now, when you just snap. You stop caring if they like you. You stop softening your truth. You stop apologizing for existing dot, and yes, it's lonely. Because your whole life was built around being what they needed. But now, it's your turn, dot, to be real, to be messy, to be you. You don't have to burn yourself, to keep others warm anymore. You are allowed to be whole even if it means walking alone. Comparison is a cruel illusion. You see them thriving, smiling, winning, and you wonder, what am I doing wrong? Why am I so far behind? But pause. You don't know their silence. You don't see their anxiety. You don't feel the cracks behind their curated highlight reel. And more importantly, you are not behind. You're on a different path, a different frequency, a different timeline. Stop measuring your journey with someone else's ruler. You're not late. You're not lost. You're not broken. You're being seasoned. And what takes longer to build lasts longer when it's done. Keep going. There's a kind of fierceness that only silence teaches. Not loud bravado, not chest-pounding motivation, but a quiet fire, the kind that doesn't beg, the kind that doesn't chase, the kind that rises slowly, steadily, unshakably. You earn that in the shadows, in the nights no one sees, in the decisions you make with no one watching. You become a different breed when you stop fearing solitude. Your standards rise. Your focus sharpens. Your energy becomes sovereign. You no longer tolerate what drains you. You no longer explain yourself to those who don't listen. You no longer hand out access to people who haven't earned it. Because the silence has made you fierce. And the world won't know what to do with you when you finally roar. Here's the final truth of this part of the path. You are not meant to stay lonely forever. This season isn't punishment. It's preparation. Because on the other side of this, you don't just find peace. You become peace. You become a light for others walking their own dark roads. You become a mirror for those who forgot who they are. You become a force that can't be ignored. But first, you had to be stripped. You had to be emptied. You had to be alone long enough to remember your own power. And now you carry a different energy. Now your presence shifts rooms. Now your words heal wounds you once carried yourself. You are the proof. That silence can strengthen. That loneliness can purify. That solitude can make a soul unbreakable. You are the light you were waiting for. That now shine.